Hey guys, so I want to talk to you about the basic communication process. You see in your book there, we don't have pages, but if you go to communications chapter, you see a little nice chart, looks like this, which basically just describes the process as the sender encoding a message. And encoding a message is just choosing whether you're going to use writing, or you're going to make a telephone call, or you're going to send a text message to convey that message, or talk to someone face to face. And obviously the extent to which a message is rich depends on the communication channel that you choose. You can only include a certain amount of information in a written note, right? Because you can't include your voice inflection and your facial expressions. You can only put what's on the text. Often that leaves some room for interpretation by the receiver because they only have your text information to go by. If you speak with them face to face, you have the richness of your facial expressions and your tone and your eye contact and your demeanor and your posture and everything about you, which says a lot, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But also you run the risk of sending mixed messages. Sometimes you can look like confused or critical or skeptical about something, and but you're confirming what the person says. But they're looking at your face, saying your face is saying one thing and your words are saying another. So we have to be skillful no matter what way in which we want to encode the message or what kind of medium we choose. We take that encoded message and we send it across a channel. Send it across a channel to the receiver. But the channel is not always perfectly clear. Sometimes there's noise in the channel. So right now, I don't know if you can hear it, but my air conditioning turned on, so there's like maybe a buzz on the video. That might be a little bit distracting. Might take away from the vocals of this. Also, you might have noticed, I don't know, that I have a monkey around my neck. And, you know, that's distracting, right? So it's noise in the channel. It's not relevant. My monkey doesn't have anything to do with the communication process. In fact, this monkey, I guess you're probably not surprised, can't even talk. Can't even smile or do anything. So let's get rid of the distraction for now. I'll put him somewhere. Set him over here for now. He'll take a little nap. So we have to be mindful that whatever communication channel that we use, there might be distractions in it. And whose fault is that? Well, that's everyone's fault. Sometimes the communication channel is not clear because, for instance, the receiver isn't in an adequate position to receive it. Like they don't have, like literally if you're on the telephone, whose fault is it that you have static on the line? Well, I don't know, it could be the sender's problem, they don't have reception, or the receiver's, or neither person's, it's just the channel that you're on is not very clear. But to be sure, noise is a distraction from the message, and our goal should be to minimize any distractions so that we have the best odds of taking our encoded message and getting it to the receiver as intended. But that's not the end of the story, because the receiver then has to take our message and interpret it. So if we do it in written text, like an email or a memo or something to someone, then we have to be careful to consider everything, for instance, we've said to that person before the receipt of that memo or that email, and even things that come immediately after it. So if I receive an email from my boss saying something, but right before that I got an email saying we're having a lot of trouble here and this includes you and we have grave concerns over something, that first email is really going to condition and alter how I perceive the message in the second email. So the timing of sending a message, even though the message itself might be crystal clear and interpretable the way I intended it to be interpreted as the sender, the timing of it might be off. And so it's not really a matter of blame, it's a matter of understanding the dynamics of the communication process and trying to avoid noise everywhere that we can. So we need to pick the right channel. Listen, you know, just like some of you, if you're dating someone and you decide you've had enough, you just pick up your phone and you say, hey, I've had enough. It's arguable that that's probably not the most suitable way in which to end a relationship. Of course, depending on how long maybe you've seen that person. If you just went out once or something, then maybe you could let it fade. But to the extent to which you have built some rapport with that person, maybe it merits a face-to-face discussion with them so that you can help them get closure, if nothing else, by answering questions so that they could see your face, that you're perhaps not angry with them, but just this isn't working out. Face-to-face is a richer forum for some kinds of communications. In the organization, when you fire someone, you typically don't just send a memo saying you're fired. Sometimes it happens, but almost always it's felt like it was really handled inappropriately, that that's not the channel to give the official news. Someone should sit down with you and say, we're having to cut back, or something's happening and it's unfortunate and this is, your job is no longer available. It's difficult information is usually best received face-to-face. So it's the receiver's job then to try to interpret what the sender meant. And that's the decoding process. And if you say something to me, you send me a message, I have to determine what you meant by it. When students send me an email, for instance, sometimes they'll be upset about something with grading or something on the test or I don't know, whatever. And I have to stop myself because sometimes when I read the words initially, I think they're being too frank, they're being too forward, they're being too aggressive in their language toward me. So, but when I stop and I realize the position of a student, who that sender is, and what their intent is, that helps me to understand them more, I think, more accurately. I just realize, look, this person is in a position of less power than I am because I'm the person in charge of grading, they're the person in charge of getting the grades. They want to advocate for themselves, so that's another reason they do it. And they don't have a lot of other means by which to get through to me other than, you know, write me or come by, but they basically need to get me that message. And so it helps me to understand the context of who's writing me and what position they're in. Also, sometimes, like just in interpersonal relationships, if someone's kind of moody with you or short with you or not giving you, sometimes people tend to just tell you what to do rather than ask you what to do. And your first reaction might be to push back and say, hey, you know, you're not the boss of me. You don't tell me what to do. But sometimes that'll just make things worse. And all we need to do is recognize, hey, this person's under a lot of pressure and they don't really mean to boss me around and I can let this slide. So the context makes all the difference. And a receiver, a good receiver should decode a message the way it was intended to be sent. And oftentimes we impute motives to someone else, and that's a big, big problem. I see this in lots of people around me where someone will say, did you see the way that person looked at me? I know what they meant by that when they said hi, but did you hear the way they said hi? Those kind of things are really highly ineffective communication interpretations, very bad decoding. It may be true that the person said hi to you and they meant, I don't like you, just because of their tone of their voice. I don't know, but neither do you. And if it's important enough to you, then you need to find a way to go back and give that person some feedback, some clarity on it, and ask them, hey, I know you said hi when I bumped into you, but it seemed like you're maybe upset or disappointed or angry with me in some way. Is there anything going on that I need to know about or I could address? Because if you're upset with me, you know, that'd be a shame. I'd want to address that. So the responsibility in communication is twofold, one for the sender and also for the receiver. The sender needs to encode a message with the receiver in mind. If I'm talking to a young person, then I need to talk in language that I think they're likely to understand. If I'm talking to one of my fellow faculty, maybe about a research project or something, then I need to talk in language that they will understand. I need to talk about statistics in a way, you know, that they'll understand. And that might be a higher level language or a more exclusive language that not everyone knows, but they know it and I know it. And so that's the nature of our sending and receiving messages. And then finally, the receiver's job is to echo back to the sender what they think they heard. And this process is a sensitive one. Oftentimes, someone will say something as a sender. They'll encode the message in writing or face-to-face or in any forum, and they hit send or it comes out of their mouth, and the receiver hears the words and believes they know what the sender meant by it, And they are they're relentless and unforgiving in their interpretation of what that person said. And they hold them to it, like as if there are no takebacks in communication. But the reality is there need to be takebacks. Sometimes I'll say something and I'll look at the face of the person I'm directing it to, and I can tell that they're not interpreting it the way that I would want them to. And I'm not sure if I said it wrong or if they heard it wrong, but the important thing is they're not getting the message that I want them to get. So I wish that they'd allow me, first, don't make me guess. Ask for clarification, not just a look on your face, and then allow me to say it again. And if you've received something that I didn't intend to send, allow me to say, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not sure if I said it wrong or if it just sounded that way to you or what, but here's what I meant. And accept that. Because communication, the goal is to have the encoded message understood in the decoding message perfectly. But it doesn't often happen that way. And that's primarily because we don't take it seriously. So the sender encodes a message, sends it across a channel which has noise. We want to minimize that. It's received by the receiver, who then has to interpret it, called decoding. And then that decoded message is echoed back to the sender. Ideally, they kind of summarize what they think the sender has said, and then we have clear communication. If the receiver receives the message and gives feedback that is not accurate, then the sender gets another chance to say, let me try again, and re-encode the message and send it again, and the decoder, the receiver, decodes it, and hopefully we get to accuracy. That's the ultimate goal. And communication is a humongous failing in organizations and in life, of course, and it's something we should pay much more attention to. Story coming up on that next.